All right, let's get started. We have a quorum. We have 5 members present here this morning, so we will commence the meeting. Let's start with the minutes from the February 8th meeting. Has everyone had a chance to take a look at those? So if they're acceptable, would someone make a motion to accept? Greg, thank you, Greg. Is there a second?
I'll
Dave?
second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Budget report. Budget reports attached. The past month, we had a few dollars of investment earnings. On the expenditure side, salary and taxes, where there was a payment, partial payment made to Weston Company for their work on the annual audit. Excuse me. There was a payment made to Harris Firm for legal work on the sale of the maintenance building at Tryon, which we received from them the revenue for that, so it's not a cost to the IDA. Out at Tryon, we had 2 expenses. One was electricity, and the second was the balance of the payment to Courthouse Construction for the work they did on installing that new water line from County Road 117 up to the tank. We also had a monthly payment for work on our website from Emery Designs, and we had to renew our SSL certificate for our website at a cost of $99. That is the budget report for the month. Any questions on that?
Motion to accept.
Joe makes a motion to accept. Is there a second to that motion by anyone? Dave, thank you, Dave. Any further questions or comments on the budget report? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Very good. Moving on to committee reports. Joe, monthly bank reconciliations.
Yes, Bill sent everything to me and everything looks good.
Very good.
I'll sign off later.
For monthly reports, we don't have a liaison yet, so we have no report from the county. I don't know, who is that on the bottom? Is that Kent? Is that you here?
Yes. Hi, Jim. How are you?
Good, Ken. Thanks for checking in. Sorry for the delay in getting you hooked in, but can you give us the CRG report, please?
Yep, I will be happy to. It's kind of a long one, so I'm going to skip over a few that are pretty self-explanatory and just focus on ones that are maybe of more interest to the group. First one on first one's about it's been on our list for ongoing activity for several months. It's a glove sewing operation that is looking to relocate to Fulton County. That looks like it's going to proceed. We just keep working with them and taking it one step at a time, but we're optimistic that's going to work out. Second one's on, we've got a group of investors looking at a building in Johnstown. I believe some of the IDA members have been involved in those meetings, but that looks to be on track at this point. Skipping down to number 7, we've got some inquiries on the JDA agriculture loans. That's something new we're managing this year, and it's looking to be a productive activity for us. Most inquiries are regarding purchase of equipment for their operations, so we continue to work with that. Skipping down number 10, we've got a New York State Nano event coming up that we'll be participating in, and the whole point there, of course, is to attract nano businesses to the region and to the county. Number 11, looking at sites for an agriculture development project. This is a pretty significant potential project. It's an indoor growth facility, and so we're working with them and with National Grid to deal with the utility issues, but hoping that will continue to move forward. On the second page, looking at number 14, the Global Foundries Tour. I can't recall exactly how many of you may have been on the last tour we did down there. I think it was about 2 to 3 years ago, but we're looking to arrange another one for the first quarter this year. And I think the potential, especially now with the supply chain issues with chips and other things, this has more relevance than ever. And we'll be sure and let you know once we have a date confirmed. But I would encourage any of you who are interested to participate in that. It's quite fascinating to see the operation down in Albany. Let's see. The number 15, we've got the Dultville is in the process of developing a brownfield opportunity area. Herkimer County's IDA is actually taking the lead on this, but we are on the steering committee, but they're working to obtain grant funding and assistance to develop plans to redevelop brownfields and other vacant and abandoned properties. So a good activity for us to be involved in. Number 16, the Fulton County Site Inventory Initiative. On the 27th of April, we're looking to have a meeting with the County E&E Committee to have a presentation from consultants on what that looks like for the county. So that's something we're quite interested in seeing. Number 17, the Fulton County EPA Brownfield Grant Task Force has recently been established. Scott is included in that group, and I think they had their first meeting and just getting things kicked off, but I think this will be quite a good project for the county, and hopefully we'll be able to get some sites redeveloped out of this in the long run. This is a first step of just making assessments, and then we'll need to apply for other grant money to continue the next steps after that. Number 18, the Mohawk Valley Brownfields Development Summit. It's a six-county program, and it'll be held April 12th and 13th up at FMCC. And I think, again, this is a really productive activity to try and create some opportunities to redevelop some sites. Going to the third page, we are working with MVED to develop a economic development strategy. This will be a region-wide activity, and so we're participating on this, but it should be really productive to identify not only opportunities but also potential obstacles to economic development and create a plan to address those. Number 20, the current year microenterprise grant program. That's been moving along quite well. We've awarded the grants, and all the grants have been allocated out to the businesses, and we're in the process of getting those processed. And we're also looking at submitting a request for another set of grant program funds. At this point, we've had our initial allotment of $300,000 that has been used, and we're looking to get another $300,000 if possible from the state. And then 21 is the Microenterprise CARES Act grant program, which, just to clarify, this is money to address businesses who've been impacted negatively by the COVID situation, and we have an initial amount of $500,000 that we've been allocated for that. We're in the middle of processing and awarding that money, but it's moving along quite well, and we've already had the initial drawdown from that program money. And then the last section, community development marketing, continuing to work with the Gloversville Downtown Revitalization Initiative. And they're in the process of having meetings to get started on projects. Kearney Group, down a couple bullets, is working to get closed on the purchase of 52 Church Street. I think you're probably all familiar with that. It's going to be quite a development, and at this point, everything seems to be on track with that. Both the towns of Northville and Kroger Lake We're in discussions with their town supervisors and boards on some potential projects. Nothing specific to talk about right now, but discussions underway. And then last item, we did close on a loan for a downtown Johnstown business recently. So that is a finished project, and we're happy to have that loan out to that business. So I hope that was helpful, provided a little bit of insight into some of these items, but happy to take any questions if there are any.
Yes, Joe Semyon, thanks for filling in for Tim. I know you have to go to Montreal today.
Yep.
Number 16 is site inventory. I'm glad that there's going to be a presentation on April 27th to the county. Will that be able to be presented possibly to us, the IDA, or are you just starting with them, and then will you have other groups or entities that you can present your findings, or how is that going to be, introduced to other parties like us that want information about it?
Yeah, Joe, I'm not sure what the plan is, to be honest with you. I'd be happy to follow up and back the group with that information. I think at minimum there would be a report available, but maybe a presentation might also be available.
Yeah, that might be nice for the May presentation. We can talk more, Tim and Ron. We can see if we can arrange something for possibly our May meeting. They can come here and show what has come out of that study. Okay.
Yep, sounds good. Thanks
Very
for the
good.
suggestion.
Any other questions?
Yeah, Ken, it's Mike Fitzgerald. You talked about Global Foundries. There's another chip plant in the former Rome Air Base that I think is going to come online this year. Original name was Cree. It's now Wolfspeed. With the county being kind of halfway in between those two locations, I don't know if there's any opportunities for our county to contribute, maybe as somebody who supplies either one or both of those sites.
Yep, and I'm sorry, Mike, did you say the outfit you're talking about?
We couldn't understand you again.
Go ahead. Hello?
Hello, yes. Ken, could you repeat what you said? We couldn't understand you.
Yeah, I was just asking if he had the name of the company. It sounded like he mentioned a company name.
What was the name?
Yeah, the original name was Cree. Last year they changed the name to Wolfspeed.
Okay.
I believe they're doing it in conjunction with maybe SUNY Poly, but it's in the former Rome Air Force Base.
That's correct.
Okay.
Significant amount of money from the state, but it's going to be a chip manufacturer in that location.
Okay.
I think Steve DeMaio at Edge is working closely with them.
Okay.
Okay, great.
All right, thank you, Ken.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ken.
Yeah. All right, we're going to deviate a little bit from the agenda and go first item under old business, or one item, and have Mike Rossi, who's here today to present his draft audit. Mike, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So today we have two reports in front of you. These reports are due on March 31st to the ABO. And what we do is we upload these to the Paris system. My partner Amy has been working with Jim, updating the financial section of the Paris report, and I believe that is mostly done. So once these are approved by the board and come out of draft, we will upload these also to the Paris report. So you have two reports, and the first one is much smaller. It is a schedule of investments. Let's say about maybe 5 years ago, the Authority Budget Office decided that IDAs had to present a separate audit of their investments. And here on page 1, we do have a new format of the opinion, and we say, in our opinion, the investments are presented fairly. When we go to page 3, you see that we say the investments are zero. The investments have been zero since we have started. The reason these investments are zero is because they are less than 1 year in duration. They are a money market. So money market does provide interest, and the money market can be easily converted to a checking account at any time. So thus, even though we have $2.3 million in the money market, which you can see on page 5, it converts to zero as a investment. If this was in a CD and the CD was greater than 1 year, we would consider those dollars an investment.
Because that implies a restriction on those dollars,
Yes.
basically.
So basically, even though a money market is an investment account,
Mhm,
it can be converted to cash at any time.
right.
And the agency thus has those zero investment dollars. But that report does need to be uploaded. Also, it is a requirement of the ABO.
Mhm.
Then we have our actual financial statements for this year. And the financial statements are in the same exact format as they have been in the past. And as I said, with the investment, page 1 has a new report on financial statements, and the opinion has gone to the top of the page, because the joke was the opinion was on page 2 and nobody got past the first page to actually see the opinion. So the opinion is right there up front now, and it says these financial statements present fairly in all material respects. That's an unqualified opinion, unmodified, they call it. So that's the highest opinion we have as a profession. After the opinion, which goes over to page 3, we have pages 4 through 13. And GASB, the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, a few years back decided that any governmental audit had to have a management discussion and analysis attached to it, because it was a greater chance for the reader to have an understanding of what happened in the year without just looking at a balance sheet, an income statement, a cash flow statement, and some notes. So here we have complied, and it gives an overview of the financial statements. Page 5 discusses the active pilots and the active sales tax exemptions that we have. So a reader can really look at this. Page 6 shows IDA projects. And all of this is really put together by Jim and Carol, and then they give it to us and we type this up. Page 6 starts a summary of 21 activities, and that goes on for multiple pages. And really, that is something that is of value to a reader, because they would have a great understanding of what happened. Page 11, still in the MD&A, is a rehash of what you're going to see as our actual balance sheet, but this is actually comparable. So it's nice because you can actually look at something, compare it to the year before. And if you look on page 11, you see that our current assets are up $1.2 million. And most of this is in the form of cash because of the large sale that we had out at the Tryon property. Also, we've taken in significant cash for some sales tax exemptions this year and pilot payments. Development projects, you see that the development projects actually decreased by 204, which was a mathematical equation where we took the acreage at Tryon, the amount of money that we had invested into the park over the years, and decided that portion was now sold and no longer part of the park. So we had to reduce our investment in the park. Page 12 is again a comparable table, and it's the same table that we will see as our income statement later. But you can see that in the 21 column under revenues, administrative fees are way up this year, and that is our sales tax exemption payments, our pilot payments that we received. And then you see the gain on sale of land, $956,340. After we took off the $204,000 from the park, that was deemed the gain on the sale of the land at Tryon. So basically, that was our big revenues and our big cash inflows that increased our current assets. Long-term debt on the bottom of that page, you can see is the exact same as it has been in the past. There's been a lot of discussion, but I do believe that the Fulton County Economic Development Corporation still exists. So that is still an outstanding long-term debt from years and years back when we borrowed money from all them people listed above.
When we borrowed that money to help build the Crossroads Business Park. As a part of that borrowing, we all agreed to over time, as lots were sold, payments would be made back to those entities that contributed dollars in hopes that over time they would be repaid the amount of money that they invested. Unfortunately, we've only had 2 lot sales in there, so we haven't repaid everybody, so that's why those stay on the books.
So why are the city of Gloversville and the EDC the same amount?
Because they contributed the same amount.
Oh, and
okay.
then on top of the contribution for a number of years in the agreement, there was interest that was applied,
Okay,
but
That's done.
that ended many, many years ago. So that is the dollars they contributed plus some interest that they
Gotcha.
received. But again, without a lot sale, that number does not change.
Yeah.
If the Fulton County Economic Development Corp was to no longer exist, that would come off the 150.
gotcha.
So this has been on the books since 1999.
Mhm.
Long time. And we have a whole note about it in our financials. So
I
page,
guess can I have a question? So
yes,
maybe this is more directed to you, Jim. So obviously EDC is not active, and it hasn't been active for a long time. So if we were to have a sale, who's the controlling entity of that now?
That we would have to determine. This EDC still legally exists. Okay, they still legally exist, as does the CIC. So we would have an obligation to make a payment, whether that would go to the EDC or CRG, that would need to be determined at that time. Because the CRG is technically the successor to the EDC. Okay,
Right.
when the CRG was created, the plan was for those 2 entities to go away and the CRG to take over the duties and responsibilities of both of those entities. It's just, it hasn't, it's an act of, it requires an act of Congress to dissolve a company like the EDC and the CRG. The Supreme Court has to be involved, and it's been a long and arduous process.
You're still working on that though?
Yes, well, to our understanding.
Right, okay.
Would we have, is there a contact for the EDC? I guess this is where I'm going with this thought. Would there be some way, could we go to the EDC and say, hey, we will purchase that debt from you now that we have some cash? Well, we would do it at a discount. Maybe we offer them 50 cents on the dollar. We purchase that debt from them, and then if those properties get sold, we get the revenue versus them. Just a thought.
Yes, that was a discussion I was going to have with the board here in the not too distant future.
Okay.
and Mike, there is a whole separate board of board members for that EDC still, that does exist, so.
Yes,
Okay.
Yeah, I believe that the EDC, they run the, I believe, the micro grant program. The program from the state that gives them the money to lend out to the small businesses.
My recollection was the creation of the CRG was to keep the 2 entities separate to make sure the CRG didn't have any of the liabilities associated with the EDC and CIC.
that was the intent. And eventually, hopefully that is the way it'll be, but as of right now, it's not. Okay? Mike?
Okay, so page 14, this is the first actual page of the financial statements for Weston Company. As I said, it was the opinion, the management discussion analysis, now the financial position. And it says net position at the top. That's nothing more than a balance sheet. You can see that the cash in the bank is $2.3 million. 369,000 of it's considered restricted because it's due back to the city of Johnstown. 1.9 million is ours for 2 projects with. Then we have development projects, 2.9 million. As I said, this number went down by 204,000 based on the sale of acreage at Tryon. And you see the debt on there, the same debt we were just talking about, 514,000, and leaves a total net position of $4.4 million. Page 15 would be the income statement. It says statement of activities. Here again, many of the same numbers that we talked about on the previous page. The two biggest revenues, the gain on the sale of the land and the administrative fees that we collected. Total change in net position for this year, $1 million. So the assets increased from 3.3 million to $4.4 million for 2021. Page 16 is a cash flow statement required to be in the financial statements. All it does is take you from the beginning cash to the ending cash, and you can see our cash increased by 1.2 million. And that, again, 956,000 basically, and a gain on sale, the administrative fees, the selling of the land, that increased our cash position. Our expenditures were much in line with the prior year. So cash increased $1.2 million. Then we have the notes to the financial statements. They are unchanged from the prior year. The numbers have been updated. Page 18 does discuss a note 2 that restricted due to the city of Johnstown. That was that $369,000 that I said was restricted. Page 19.
Oh, sorry. With that, for Greg's sake, the 369 represents an amount of money that the IDA is holding in a interest-bearing account on behalf of the city of Johnstown. This goes back to 1987, when the Johnstown Industrial Park was built. The city of Johnstown bought all of the land for the Johnstown Industrial Park. They deeded that over to the IDA so that we could sell it to individual companies, which the city has restrictions on their ability to do so. In return for them deeding it over to us, we executed an agreement with the city. And what it said was that for every dollar of lot sales, the IDA keeps 7%. It's kind of an administrative fee. The other 93%, half of that, every time there was a sale, half of that would go back to the city as a cash payment. But the other half, the city asked the IDA back then to keep the other half in an interest-bearing account for the city's sole use, for them to do projects as they desired. So since 1987, we have maintained this separate account that is the city's money. We can't touch it. And every so often, we get a letter from the city saying, the city treasurer saying, we'd like X amount of dollars to do a project. And when we get that letter, we write them a check.
Quick question.
Yep.
Now that there's a change in administration at the city, new mayor, new treasurer, are they aware that this? Okay.
So the interesting thing is really what IDAs and everybody needs is a story.
Yeah.
Right. Because, you know, this is back to 1999. This is back to 1987. I mean, there's a lot of.
Yeah.
We're some old guy who stuck around.
Yeah, well, you need something because there's a lot to these IDAs. Page 19 lists at the top, that's the $2.9 million. Now, Tryon Technology Park has still $644,000. If that was to have a final sale, we would reduce that to zero, and whatever the cost above that, you know, sales price above that cost would become a gain on sale there. Below is that note about long-term debt. And you can see in there, the interest actually ended in 2005. So that was great. Page 20 is a fair value, just says that the long-term debt is what it is. Below that, note 6, industrial revenue bond. We still have the outstanding bond for the YMCA, and that is being paid down. It is down to $1,401,000. And we confirm that with NBT Bank each year.
Mike, could you change the title of that in the final to civic facilities? It's not an industrial revenue, but it's a civic facility.
You know, we say that below.
Yeah, I missed that. Yeah,
So that will change to civic facility bond.
thank you.
Okay. 7, investments, we say that, the cash was all collateralized. Note 8, we say on page 21 that there's no subsequent events since the issuance of this report that needed to be determined or put into the report. Page 22 and 23, because this is a governmental audit, a yellow book audit, we have to give a second opinion over internal controls. Here again, a clean opinion over internal controls. Jim and Carol, the board, I see, you look at the cash, you review the cash, you go through the controls that are required each year in your board meetings, so there's no issue with that. And then page 24 is an actual schedule of that civic facilities bond. And you see the YMCA, the current interest rate, where it started, the principal they paid, the principal interest, and the ending balance of $1.4 million. Also attached to the report on page 25 and 26 is the code of ethics. And then on page 27, once this becomes a final copy, Jim and Carol will actually sign each of these copies, certifying that this is true to their belief. And then it is uploaded to Paris, as I said. So, overall, the audit went well. Carol provides us everything very early in January, so we can meet the March 31st deadline, which we will meet as long as the board approves the financial statements.
Any questions of Mike?
I just, as a person that used Weston Company, I think it's in good hands with the report, so it's done professionally, and that we continue our long relationship with Weston Company.
Jim and I were talking, this may be my next to last year or my last year. We're gonna see every 5 years, there's a requirement for a rotation of auditor. If that's the case, either Amy Pedrick, who's been before, or Jill Tice is another partner, one of those two could take over for me for the next 5 years.
Yeah, we gotta check that.
We'll check that out though, and we will be aware of that too. We will not go against that.
If there are no questions, would someone in the agenda on page 5, there's a motion put in there to approve the 2021 audit as submitted and authorize Weston Company and the executive director to file the audit in Paris and to distribute the audit as we are required to do by law.
I'll make the motion. Second.
Greg? Any further discussion or comments? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion to approve the audit, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Very good.
And
Thank you.
when you get the final copies, note 6, page 20 will say civic facility bond
Yep.
and note transactions. Okay,
Email that to me when you can.
we will have this out of draft and to you later this afternoon.
Sounds great.
All right, thank you very much.
Thanks,
Thanks.
Have a nice day.
Okay, everyone, let's go back to old business. We'll try to get through things here as quickly as we can. The status reports, the Nexus Renewable Project, still trying to negotiate a contract that will allow them to move this project forward. At present, they're facing some cost escalations that is prohibiting them from to get started. So they're looking at some options in that regard. With Vireo Health, construction is ongoing out at Tryon. I think the big news to report is what I shared with everybody in my email, is that they've gone through a name change. And after doing the name change, they are in the process of being acquired by a company called Verano Holdings, based in Chicago. Verano Holdings is a much larger company than Vireo, more access to capital. And the hope is that they will be able to do more things out there than Vireo did because of their size and access to capital. So Vireo Health in New York will continue to operate. There'll be no changes there. Just that they are now a They used to be a subsidiary of Berea Health International. Then they were a subsidiary of Goodness Growth, and now they're going to be a subsidiary of Verano Holdings. And this transaction will not have any impacts on the ongoing project out there. In fact, it is the crown jewel from Verano, because they're currently based in 15 different states and they're looking to get into New York State and the New York State market. Then this is the method in which they're getting into this market. Okay. Huffman's Car Wash project ongoing with Win Stanley. The agreement between Win Stanley and the county regarding domain names has been drafted. It's being reviewed. Waiting to hear back from IT on its acceptance. Hopefully it's okay. Win Stanley has developed a neat brochure. Copies here are what they put together. I have distributed copies of this to the Board of Supervisors, to the Center for Regional Growth, to the Town of Perth Town Board, to the Town of Perth Planning Board, so they can all see what what Win Stanley's vision is for Tryon. I was supposed to go to the February Town of Perth Planning Board meeting to share with them this vision. That meeting did not get held because they did not have anything else on the agenda. So I'm now scheduled to go to their March meeting and have a discussion with them so they can ask any questions they may have on this particular project. Moving on to the Fulton County Sewer District number 4, backup generator project, where our spec is getting put together here. Things are never simple anymore. That's about half of what the final spec is going to be like. For a simple little project like this, Dave fully understands the paperwork, but bids are going to be due on April 5th. So we will review the bids and hopefully be in a position to award a contract at your next meeting. At our last meeting, we talked about having a survey done as part of this discussion of the lands that we were going to deed over to the Fulton County Sewer District so they could have access to the sewer infrastructure that we're going to be deeding over to the sewer district here in the not too distant future. I got a quote from Ferguson and Foss, who's done all the surveying work out at Tryon, and to prepare meets and bounds descriptions of those 2 parcels. His quote was $2,500. Now, I sent you all an email last week about the interest that Lot Holdings has in a portion of that one parcel that's inside the loop road. Okay, and I spoke with Mick Mullins, the Lot Holdings realtor, about this, because what I sent to you, he attached a little sketch with just a red line, which was pretty arbitrary. And so what I went back to Mick was to say, there's a creek that kind of flows through that parcel. So it would be neat to use that kind of physical attribute as a boundary to follow. And if you follow that boundary on the north end with the loop road at the bottom end, we're talking about a 20-acre parcel. The upper part above the creek would be where all that sewer infrastructure is, and that would be left about 8 acres. And so my question to the board is, are you willing to consider selling that 20 acres to Lot Holdings at a price yet to be determined? Okay, because if you are, then we're going to end up, I got to go back to Ferguson and Foss and say, I need you to revise your proposal a little bit, because you're now going to prepare meets and bounds description on 3 parcels, not 2. So my question to the board is are you interested in pursuing the potential sale of that tract of land to Lot Holdings?
Yeah, otherwise it was just gonna sit empty and
Correct.
unused. Does a lot indicated what the proposed use would be? They just want a buffer from everything else around them?
Potential expansion of their building,
Oh, okay.
and they interested in that site where there's been a little bit of disposal, where we had a little site there that the state had for years, right adjacent to their property, which has been used for clean fill.
Oh,
Okay, and so, but more for potential expansion of their building.
gotcha.
Okay,
Mhm.
so Todd, Mike, are you okay with the concept of selling that to them?
I am.
I'm
Okay,
okay with the concept. I'm just curious as to why we wouldn't use the existing price per acre for a sale price.
Because it's wetlands.
similar to what we did with Vireo, Todd. Vireo, we sold them 92 acres. Some of that acreage was within the park, and we sold that to them at the selling price per acre that was in the park. The other pieces that were outside the park, we sold at a much lesser cost. The same concept here. The pieces that are inside of that loop road are technically not part of the Tryon Park. We never had any lots laid out because most of it is wetland and undevelopable property. So my concept would be is we would look to sell this land comparable to what we sold that backlands to Vireo to. It doesn't have the same development potential that as the lands within the park have.
At least we would get some value for it instead of.
And it would be on the tax
turning it
rolls.
over. Right.
And he would pay taxes on it. For now, all I need is your interest in whether you're interested in selling that or not, so that I can tell the surveyor, let's go out and survey it this way. And then we need to have continued discussions with Lot Holdings on whether or not what they're willing to pay for that property.
I would say yes. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm on board.
What I'm gonna ask you to do is, right, we know to do the 2 parcels is 2,500. That's what Ferguson and Foss quoted. I didn't want to go to him and ask him to do another price without knowing if you guys are interested in this. So what I'm going to ask you to do is to approve a contract with Ferguson and Foss at some higher number for whatever it is to add in doing 3 parcels versus 2.
Mhm.
Does that make sense? Does everyone understand that?
Mhm.
Okay. So to that extent, would someone make a motion to authorize a contract with Ferguson and Foss and an amount above the 2,500, whatever that comes in at, for him to add in doing the 3rd parcel?
Do we want to put a not to exceed on that? Do we think there's a reasonable place?
Well, the 2 parcels are 2,500, so that's 1,250 a parcel.
I was gonna suggest we just do a not to exceed of 5,000,
Okay,
just as it gives you some room there to deal with, in case this particular deed description is complicated for some reason, that goes beyond the other
fair
2.
enough. I think that would be great.
Okay,
Okay, you gonna make that motion?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second that.
Okay, the motion is to authorize a contract with Ferguson and Foss in an amount not to exceed $5,000 to prepare meets and bounds descriptions of 3 parcels out of Tryon. Dave has made that motion. Greg has seconded that motion. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
All right,
Anyone opposed? Motion carried. Last thing, the board authorized CT Mail several months ago to prepare sewer infrastructure drawings. Those have been finalized. There's a cover page and about 8 pages of details. It came out very nice. I'll pass that around if anyone's interested in taking a look at those. Moving on to new business, we did the audit. The second is our annual report. I sent that out to everybody. It's this big, thick. I'm sure you all read every page of it.
I'm on vacation.
that was out in the
Oh,
hall.
that was on the hall. I thought that was, sounded like Kara's voice in the background. Anyone have any questions or comments on the annual report? Hearing none, when someone make the motion that's in the agenda. Greg, thank you, Greg.
I'll second, Jim.
Thank you, Mike. Any further comments or discussion on the annual report? All in favor, say aye.
All right,
Anyone?
Aye.
Very good, thank you. The next 3 items are all tied to the annual reporting that companies that are receiving sales tax exemptions from us have to do. What ABO wants the IDA board to do is to look at those reports to make sure that the companies receiving those exemptions are not exceeding the amounts that the board approved for them to take. So I'm going to ask, there's no action needed. I'm just going to report, for example, with the Hoffman project. The total project cost was 3.6. The total cost subject to sales tax, 3.7 million. And the board approved Hoffman's taking $296,000 worth of exemptions. If you flip to the top of page 7, what they reported on their ST 340 was they took $47,392.99 worth of exemptions in 2001, meaning they still have another $248,000 of exemptions left. So they're fine. They haven't exceeded their totals. Moving down to Benjamin. Did I miss one?
Vireo.
Vireo, I'm sorry, I gotta start with Vireo, my bad, yes. Vireo, the total of sales exemptions that we approved was 1.771 million. If you look, what they reported on their ST 340 form was they took $1,086,510 last year. So they have another $685,000 left. Okay. Moving on to Benjamin Moore. Again, the board approved taking $720,000 worth of exemptions. Last year, they claimed $637,000 and change, leaving about $82,000 worth left. So in all 3 instances, the companies have not exceeded what the board approved. Now, what a company can do is if they ended up spending more than they originally thought for whatever reasons, and in today's times with inflation and rising costs, these companies are experiencing higher costs than what they originally predicted. And so in the Benjamin Moore case, they are coming back and asking the board to increase the amount of sales tax exemptions from 720 to 832. And before we go any further on this,
I have to accuse myself. Because they are a good customer.
Joe is going to recuse himself because he has a conflict of interest because his company does work with Benjamin Moore. Okay?
That famous place that Dave always goes to.
And so we received a correspondence from Benjamin Moore specifically asking for this increase. They cited project cost increases due to design changes, project cost increases due to inflation, as the 2 main reasons why they are asking for this increase. In response, Kara has drafted a resolution that is attached to your agenda. And this resolution would approve this request for an increase in the exemption. And it would, okay. Does anyone have any questions on this request for an increase in the exemptions from $720,000 to $832,000 worth of sales tax exemptions? If not, would someone be willing to make the motion to approve this resolution as written? Well, first of all, Kara, any further input from your end?
No, nothing else to add.
Okay. Would someone be willing to make, Greg has made the motion to adopt this resolution as presented. Is there a second to this motion?
I'll second, Jim.
Mike Fitzgerald with a second. Any further questions on this resolution? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? And we have 1 abstention. Very good. Resolution is passed.
Jim, just one item. Could you Can you email me the signed documents after, and I can get those filed and off to Benjamin Moore?
I will get those when Mike is healthy enough to come in and sign those. Mike's
Oh,
home-
that's
Mike's
right.
home-
He's on Zoom.
Mike's home
Sorry.
sick today, so whenever he feels better enough, they're sitting here waiting to be signed.
Okay, no problem. Sorry. I'm
Yeah.
seeing everyone on Zoom, so I just assumed. Sorry.
No, understood.
Jim,
I hope you feel better.
Jim, I can come down after the meeting. I just didn't want to spread this to the whole.
Whatever, Mike.
You're fine. Spread it to you. It's just not the rest of us.
Yeah,
Thanks,
let me
Mike.
know what time you're gonna be here. I'll be gone by then.
We'll just slide it through. We'll just slide it through a slot in the door.
Okay. Last item, just reporting back. You folks had made a recommendation to the city of Gloversville months ago that to try and expand the potential uses allowed in the Crossroads Business Park, that they consider amending the zoning ordinance to allow multi-family housing to be allowed in that park. Gloversville Planning Board has reviewed and has endorsed that recommendation, so that has been submitted to the city council for an action. So hopefully that will just increase the types of uses that will be allowed there. No guarantee it's going to produce any results, but the board's recommendation has been pursued. So last item, board training, dealing with bylaws. I sent everybody the proposed changes. The bylaws were initially adopted in 2007. They were revised in 2010. Since then, there have been some changes to the laws governing IDAs and IDA and ABO policies that I think are where I think it's appropriate for us to update our bylaws. I posed two particular questions to the ABO that they responded to, which is here. The first is whether just a majority of the IDA members must be independent or the entire board. Because our bylaws previously said all IDA members have to be independent. Independent means a certain number of things. But the law was changed, I thought, to say now only a majority has to be, and they confirmed that it just needs to be a majority of the board has to be independent. Okay, which is defined as shown here in the agenda. And then the second one was, can a member of the IDA board also serve as its executive director? And they confirmed that yes, you can. Now, right now, the IDA's bylaw says a member can't. I'm proposing in the changes to open that up to allow it. It doesn't mean the board has to do it, but if the ABO and the law says it's an option for the IDA to consider, my suggestion is let's just put it in there to allow it. Best practice has kind of been to hire separately. That's what you've done with me over the years. But if for whatever reasons it occurred in the future, you couldn't find an executive director and someone was willing to take on that role as a board member short term, you would have that ability.
You're
So-
funny, Joe.
With that as background, I made a number of suggested changes. One was adding a section on member qualifications. And part of this was driven by Kara's back and forth we had when Jane Kelly moved out of county. You know, we went back and forth because there was some conflicting information on whether an IDA board member had to be a resident of the county in that IDA, and the research determined that it is, you have to be. So I just thought it would have been good to put that, and you also have to be at least 18 years of age to be a member of the IDA. So I put a section in on member qualifications. Updated the duties and responsibilities of IDA members. Again, the ABO made some changes to that, so I just updated that. Again, changing the word all to a majority of the members shall be independent. Change the wording about that a member can be the executive director. Added language to the section on the manner of voting. And that is tied to being able to vote by Zoom. Right now, because of the governor's emergency executive order, we can participate by Zoom. Everybody can participate by Zoom. But once that executive order goes away, what the law says, and Kara, correct me if I'm wrong, a member can participate by Zoom, but in the meeting notice that goes out, we have to identify the address at which that member is going to be at to participate by Zoom. And any member of the public can knock on your door and say, I'm here to participate in the meeting. Kara, is that a fair assessment?
Yes, that's accurate. So if you're out of state, in state, your address needs to be in the notice, and you have to allow the public to participate at that location. So it does take some advanced planning. You couldn't decide that morning that you're gonna appear remotely if it's not, in the notice. But we'll see if they make any changes. Right now, the order is in effect until March 16th, so we'll see what happens.
I also updated what the contents of the agency's annual report must include, which this document now complies with. But again, previously, what we required in the report was vastly different than what is now required. And I added a new article on indemnification of members and officers. There was some language in there, but I updated that accordingly. And with respect to indemnification, we don't have our own public officers liability policy. We are covered by the counties. Okay, so the counties has a large public officers liability policy, and we are, as a rider on that, IDA members are covered. And that's been that way since 1999. Okay. Any questions on these proposed changes? You've all seen those. I'm sure you've spent hours reviewing them.
Diligently.
I would like to accept those changes.
Joe Semio makes a motion to approve those changes as presented. Is there a second to that motion? Dave Demore makes a second. Any questions on these changes? Comments? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Motion carried. Last item, just a quick thing on real estate purchase options. Joe had asked to have a quick discussion about these, and because it's something that we've used in the past, and in particular for some of our new board members, making sure there's an understanding of what a real estate purchase option is. What it is it's a contract on a specific piece of real estate that allows the buyer the exclusive right to purchase the property. Once a buyer has an option to buy a property, the seller cannot sell the property to anyone else. The buyer pays the seller a fee for the option to purchase the property. The option usually includes a predetermined purchase price and is valid for a specific term. However, the buyer does not have to buy the property, whereas the seller has to sell the property if it's being sold in conformance with the terms in the option. Now, we've used this in the past on properties. Most recently was with Vireo Health. Vireo Health came to us in 2020 and said, we want to option 90 some acres of land. We agreed. And then prior to the 1-year expiration term of that option, Vireo came to us and said, we want to exercise that option. And we ended up selling them that property for the agreed price that was in the option. Okay. So as we move forward, we may be talking about options in the future. And if we do, that's how they kind of operate. So any questions? Very good. I'd like to ask for a motion to go into executive session as written in the agenda.
Make that motion.
Dave makes a motion. Greg makes a second to that motion. All in favor, say aye.
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 Motion carried. We're going into executive session at 9:11 a.m. To close the meeting,
So moved.
Dave, is there a second to that? Greg? All in favor, say aye.
All right.
The meeting is adjourned. We'll see you all on Tuesday, April 12th. Hope everybody's feeling better.
April 12th? Yeah, I guess it's March already.